You know that feeling, your news feed, it's just relentless AI news, nonstop.
Yeah, new models dropping like every other day.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking research.
It really is like trying to keep up with a rocket launch, totally dizzying. And for you, someone who really values staying informed, you've probably seen more AI headlines just recently than, well, maybe all of last year.
Exactly. And that's precisely why we decided to really dive deep this time. We've waded through a ton of updates.
A real collection, right?
Yeah, everything from the big names,
Mm-hmm.
your NVIDIAs, Googles, Mistrals, Metas, but also some really fascinating stuff from the open source world and academia too.
So the mission here is basically cutting through all that noise.
Pretty much. Cut through the hype, give you a clear view on what actually matters.
Okay, consider this your like express lane to getting up to speed. We're going to break down the latest on the AI models themselves, how they're performing, what the benchmarks really mean.
Uh-huh. And the new tools, the frameworks developers are using.
Right. And we'll look at AI agents, robotics, what's happening in AI education, research, funding.
And, some key industry news too. It all ties together.
Definitely. So let's start right at the core, the AI models themselves.
Okay, well, what jumps out immediately is just the speed of progress, but like on different fronts.
How so?
Take NVIDIA, for instance.
Yeah.
They make the GPUs, the chips powering so much AI.
Right, the hardware backbone.
Exactly. And they decided to open source their open code reasoning models, the OCR ones. There's a 32 billion, 14 billion, and 7 billion parameter version.
All under Apache 2.0 license. That's pretty open.
Yeah, it is. And they're claiming, big gains on coding benchmarks like Live Code Bench. Better than their own previous stuff.
Okay, performance boost. What else?
Well, they're saying it's about 30% more token efficient and, crucially, compatible with popular frameworks people actually use, Llama.cpp, VLLM, Transformers, TGI.
So it's easier for people to actually pick up and use.
That's the idea. It makes it more practical for real-world applications, not just a lab experiment.
So this whole move, open sourcing these powerful coding models, what's the bigger picture? What kind of ripples does that send out?
Well, I think what's really insightful isn't just that they open source them, but the potential disruption it causes, right?
Disruption how?
Suddenly, smaller teams, startups, research groups, they get access to really capable coding models. Wow. They could speed up innovation in all sorts of niche areas the big guys might overlook.
So it's like lowering the barrier to entry for serious development.
Exactly. Think of it as democratizing access to that raw power. Yeah, not just the fancy apps built on top.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about Mistral? They're another big name. They've got this Mistral Medium 3 out.
Right. And they're positioning it pretty aggressively, saying it rivals models like Llama 4 Maverick, even some versions of Gemini and Claude.
But specifically for tasks outside pure reasoning?
Yeah, that seems to be the angle. They're really highlighting gains in coding and math, and the pricing looks, well, very competitive.
How competitive?
It's 4.4 per $1 million input tokens and 2 per $1 million output tokens. Definitely designed to undercut some others.
Interesting. But you mentioned questions about their open source stance.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shift from Mistral, and we don't actually know the model size for this Medium 3, so it's hard to do a perfect apples-to-apples comparison on scale alone.
So it raises questions about different company strategies, maybe? Balancing open versus proprietary?
Exactly. How much do you give away versus keep close to the chest? It's a constant tension.
And speaking of proprietary, Google's been updating Gemini. What's new there?
Well, Gemini 2.5 Pro apparently gets better coding results even from simpler prompts. That points towards, better usability for developers.
Easier to work with, potentially.
Right. But the cost comparison between their Flash models is quite stark. Gemini 2.5 Flash turns out to be way more expensive than 2.0 Flash.
Why is that?
It seems to be mostly down to how they price the output tokens and just how many tokens get used in typical evaluations. So performance might be up, but the cost?
The economics are a big factor developers need to weigh.
Absolutely. It really highlights that critical point.
Right.
It's not just about peak performance. It's about the economic viability. Can people actually afford to deploy this stuff at scale?
Good point. Now, switching gears slightly, you mentioned something called Absolute Zero Reasoner, AZR. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, this one's fascinating. It's getting state-of-the-art results, SOTA, in coding and math, but without using external data.
Wait, no external data? How does it learn?
It uses this novel approach, self-evolving training and reasoning. It basically uses a code executor to learn and improve itself.
Wow, so it's kind of bootstrapping its own knowledge through trial and error with code?
Sort of, yeah. It's a really different training methodology. Could have, pretty profound implications down the line if it pans out.
That is a significant departure. Okay, we also saw mentions of XReasoner, more reasoning focused.
Yeah, that one's geared towards vision language reasoning.
Yeah.
And then there's Apple jumping in with fast VLM.
Right, the vision language model, and they even showed it running on an iPhone.
Exactly. Which really hammers home how much this AI stuff is getting baked into, well, everything. Consumer devices, everyday tech.
The integration seems to be accelerating.
Definitely. Apple releasing the code and models, including that MLX implementation, it's a strong signal. And on the more technical development side, there's QLoRa support added to the Hydrine LoRa trainer.
Okay, remind us what LoRa and QLoRa help with.
So LoRa techniques, and especially QLoRa, basically help developers fine-tune these massive AI models using less computer power, less memory. It makes tweaking them more accessible.
So a practical win for developers without massive resources.
Precisely. And we also shouldn't ignore NVIDIA's Parakeet ASR model. ASR is automatic speech recognition.
Speech-to-text stuff.
Right. And Parakeet hit the top spot on the Hugging Face leaderboard for that.
Huh.
Plus, there are new open datasets like Swallow Code and Swallow Math.
What's the goal with those datasets?
They're designed specifically to boost LLM performance by improving the quality of the training data itself, by rewriting it. Better data in, better model out.
Makes sense. It feels like a really broad push across different areas. Vision, speech, code, data.
It really is. And you see it on the massive scale, too. Huawei's Pangu Ultra MoE model.
MoE, mixture of experts, right? Big, efficient models.
Yeah. This one's a sparse 718 billion parameter model. They trained it on 6,000 of their Ascend MPUs, their custom AI chips.
Whoa. 718 billion parameter, 6,000 chips. That's serious scale.
It really is. They're reporting good efficiency, like 30% MFU,
Yeah.
and performance roughly comparable to DeepSeek R1.
Yeah.
It just shows the huge compute involved.
And Tencent released Primitive Anything on Hugging Face, too.
Yep. Another model added to the growing ecosystem. So, yeah, lots happening with the models themselves. Maybe we should shift to the tools and frameworks people use to build with them.
Good idea. What's standing out there?
Well, one theme is maturity, like addressing real-world needs. Anthropic updated their API, for instance.
What's new?
It now includes web search, built right in. And importantly, it provides citations for the search results and lets you control the domains it searches.
Ah, citations are huge for trust, right? Knowing where the AI got its info.
Exactly. It directly tackles those concerns about reliability and, AI just making stuff up.
Absolutely. And Langsmith expanding support beyond just text?
Yeah, no, handling images, PDFs, audio. That really reflects the move towards multimodal AI, doesn't it? Building apps that understand different kinds of data.
It seems essential now. You need AI that can see, hear, and read.
Totally.
Yeah.
And on the creative side, Runway making Gen 4 and references available on their free plan, that's great for accessibility.
Lowers the barrier for creators wanting to play with advanced AI video tools.
Definitely. And another sign of maturity in the ecosystem. VLLM and DeepSpeed are now officially welcomed by the PyTorch Foundation.
Okay, what does that signal? Why is that important?
Well, PyTorch is a foundational machine learning library, bringing VLLM, which speeds up LLM inference, and DeepSpeed, which helps train massive models under that umbrella. It kind of cements their importance as key infrastructure pieces.
Gotcha. So the core building blocks are getting more robust and integrated.
Right. And then smaller practical things too, like LangGraph, adding built-in cron jobs.
Cron jobs,
Yeah.
scheduled tasks, basically.
Yeah. Sounds minor, but super useful for automating AI workflows. Yeah. You can just schedule things to run regularly within the framework.
Makes sense. And tools like Dolphin Logger, what's that about?
So it acts as a proxy, like an intermediary, for services that use the OpenAI API format. It lets developers log all the interactions.
But why log everything? Debugging.
Exactly. Debugging, performance analysis, just understanding how your AI app is actually behaving out in the wild. Detailed logging is critical for that.
Right, you need that visibility.
And related to visibility and control, there's Llama Firewall. That's an open source guardrail system.
Guardrails against what? Bad inputs.
Yeah, things like prompt injection, where people try to trick the AI with malicious inputs. Also helps with model misalignment, making sure it behaves as intended, and preventing insecure code generation.
So, addressing safety and security concerns head on.
As AI gets more powerful, systems like that become increasingly vital for responsible deployment.
Okay, so we've hit the models, the tools. Let's move into AI agents and robotics. Feels like this is where the AI starts interacting more with the physical world or acting more autonomously.
Definitely. And you start seeing potential real-world economic impacts,
Yeah.
like the estimated cost for robotaxis.
What are they projecting?
Some estimates put it in the $10 to $30 per hour range once a full AI driving solution is really implemented and scaled.
That's a big once, but yeah, that would be a massive shift in transportation costs.
Absolutely. It gives you a glimpse of what that future might look like,
Yeah.
but it also raises other challenges.
Like what?
Like with these ambient agents, AI that's just running in the background for long periods, the user experience, the UX, has to be really thoughtful.
You don't want it to be annoying or require constant babysitting.
Exactly. Automatic activation, intuitive controls.
Yeah.
But that's crucial if these things are going to be widely adopted and actually helpful. User-centered design is key.
Makes sense. What about the underlying tech for robotics?
Well, Meta developed Locate 3D. It's a model specifically for accurately finding objects in 3D space.
Which is critical for a robot to understand its environment, right?
Precisely. For embodied AI, for robots that need to interact physically, knowing where things are is fundamental.
And how are robots learning new skills?
There's progress in visual imitation pipelines, basically converting standard single-camera videos of humans doing tasks into skills that humanoid robots can actually learn and perform.
Wow, so learning by watching. Like how humans learn.
Kind of, yeah. It's a big step forward for robot learning, making it potentially easier to teach them complex actions.
Very cool. We also saw mentions of SWE Bench and SWE Agent, software engineering related.
Right. SW Bench is a benchmark to test how well AI agents can do software engineering tasks, like fixing bugs or adding features, and SWA Agent is an AI built to try and tackle those tasks.
So AI helping to write AI, or at least software.
Essentially, yeah. Applying AI to the process of software development itself. And related to complex environments, Enigma Labs released their Multiverse AI multiplayer world model.
Multiverse AI sounds like sophisticated simulation.
That's the idea, creating these complex, shared virtual worlds where multiple AI agents can interact, learn, and be tested. It's pushing simulation tech forward.
Okay, got it. So that covers agents and robotics. Let's shift to the broader landscape, education, research, investment. What's the vibe there?
Well, on the investment side, the AI fund closed a $190 million fund. Their key message to startups: speed. Embrace speed.
That definitely echoes the pace we're seeing everywhere else. Agility is key.
Seems like it. And in education, there's a new short course focused on building AI voice agents.
Voice agents specifically.
Yeah, featuring instructors from places like LiveKit, real avatar AI companies, deep in voice tech. It shows a growing focus on voice as, a key interface for AI.
Makes sense, talking to our tech.
And for the more academic crowd, MLS 2025 is happening in Santa Clara. They have a young professional symposium with some pretty big names in ML research speaking.
Good to see focus on the next generation of researchers. Where else is AI making an impact?
We saw notes about its increasing use in financial research and search. Just shows how broadly applicable this stuff is becoming, hitting established industries.
Right, it's not just tech companies anymore.
Exactly. And the CB Insights AI 100 list, which tracks promising early-stage private AI startups.
What trends are they seeing?
They highlighted growth specifically in AI agents and infrastructure startups, which aligns perfectly with the tech developments we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, the tools and the autonomous systems seem to be hot areas.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And on the safety research front, there was a Stanford NLP seminar talk about what memorization research teaches us about AI safety.
So digging into how models remember data and what that implies for risks.
Precisely. It's that crucial ongoing work to understand and mitigate potential downsides as AI gets smarter.
Super important. We also came across a flurry of other bits and pieces, didn't we?
Yeah, quite a bit. Whispers about Meta and Jan LeCun may be parting ways. Meta's own AGI plan details.
Upgrades to Anthropic's Claude models.
The backing U.S. diffusion rule developments.
Oh, and that Apple and Anthropic collaboration on a vibe coding platform. What even is that?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Sounds intriguing, though, doesn't it? And the Hugging Face Lee Robot Worldwide Hackathon for 2025.
It just underscores the sheer volume of activity, constant motion.
Absolutely. It's incredibly vibrant. Which leads us nicely into the final area, key industry and business news. These moves often shape how the tech actually gets used.
Right, like OpenAI appointing Fujisimo as CEO of applications.
Yeah, reporting to Sam Altman, who remains overall CEO but is focusing more on research, compute, and safety.
So maybe splitting focus as they scale, applications versus core tech.
Could be. It
Yeah.
might signal them maturing, really separating the product side from the foundational research. And Altman's push on the Four Countries initiative is interesting, too.
Trying to position OpenAI as a driver of economic growth globally.
Seems like a potential strategic direction, yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of strategic shifts, Meta appointed Rob Fergus as the new head of Metafair, their research arm.
With a refocusing on AGI, artificial general intelligence.
That's the reported emphasis. Again, reflecting evolving priorities at the very top of these major AI labs.
And we touched on this earlier, but that point about the scale of something like the Stargate 1 site.
Right. It's hard to even picture the sheer size and complexity of the infrastructure needed to train these frontier models. The compute resources are just immense.
Easy to overlook that when we just talk about the models themselves.
Totally. It gives you a sense of the massive investment involved. And one final, maybe cautionary note from Google.
What was that?
They apparently observed mobile search volume declining after they prioritized short-term revenue goals over the user experience.
Oof. A reminder that chasing dollars can backfire if users get frustrated.
Yeah. Exactly. A valuable lesson, maybe, for any tech company navigating rapid change. Don't lose sight of the customer experience in the process.
So wrapping this whole deep dive up, it's just undeniable, isn't it? The pace is relentless.
Absolutely. Across the board. Models getting better, new tools popping up, agents and robots advancing, research pushing boundaries, industry players making big moves.
It really feels like simultaneous progress on so many fronts. Open source pushing alongside intense corporate competition.
Yeah, that dynamic is fascinating. Plus, the expanding capabilities into new areas and these evolving strategies from the major companies, it's all pointing towards a very dynamic and honestly transformative future.
It really is. So on that note, here's maybe a final thought for you, listening. With everything we've covered today, all the speed and breadth, what single area do you think will actually hit closest to home? What will have the biggest impact on your life or your work in, say, the next year?
Definitely something to chew on as we all try to navigate this landscape. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We hope this helped bring some clarity to the sometimes overwhelming world of AI.